Hello, 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 everyone. Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Oh, I didn't realize. Um, Hi, Grim. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Oh, my model is not wanting to cooperate with the mouth thing. Hold up. Let me fix that. Always got to have a little bit of scuff, huh? Okay, let's see if it wants to cooperate now. Hello? Perfect. I think that'll have to do. um, Let me get that turned off. Okay. Yeah, wait, hold on. How? Carrot, how are you not made a mod yet? Oh well. That is now a thing that you have. Cool, great. Okay, now that we're not scuffed. Hi everyone. Before we get started, a huge thank you to everyone that's shown up today for the renewal of the Mystic Podcast, Quarters Podcast. This was my baby for the longest time, and being able to start it up and reconnect with my community and teach you all something has made me so incredibly happy. For those of you coming from other communities, welcome. My name is Rania Stars. Some of you know me as Raven. Some of you know me as Nia Wimpy. Hello. Some of you know me as Nia or Ori Stars and other names. It's all the same to me. But if you know my government name, no, you don't. So, welcome. First, a huge thank you to our mods tonight. We have It's Fern's Turn, aka Fern. She's a cozy streamer, mental health advocate, and longtime friend of the channel. Unfortunately, Nevasim was not able to join us today, but she was supposed to and still gets a shout out. Thank you for making the commitment. She's an artist of the channel, streamer, and another longtime friend of the channel. We also have Grimster tonight, aka Grim. He is another streamer, a great friend, and Monster Hunter fanatic. And we've got Not Crimson in the chat, aka Crimson. He's also a wonderful friend, helper, and quite the chaotic neutral shit poster, if I do say so myself. And then last but certainly not least, we have Carrot Cleric, aka Carrot. Another cozy streamer, artist and crafter, and all around a funny carrot. Please, everyone, if you aren't, go follow them and give them some love. They've been gracious enough to lend me some of their time so that I can focus putting on this show for all of you, and I am so, so grateful for their support. Now, let's look at the plans for the podcast moving forward. If I can, there we go. This is going to work maybe a little bit differently than you've seen my podcasts work before. And with big topics like this is how it's going to work in the future. Every week, we'll have a mini 1-hour learning space on Monday nights, and then I'll play games with people. During the hour learning on Monday nights, I'll keep the floor open for questions during the show and then answer them as we go. But then every 2 to 3 weeks, there are going to be big topic podcasts where I allow you to ask questions as the show goes, but I'll really only be answering them in a Q&A session at the end. Now, all of these videos, regardless of length, will go up on YouTube for people that can't make it. So if you miss an episode, don't worry. You'll be able to go revisit and ask questions in the comments. I'll answer as many as I can within a week, but then after that, I'll be closing the video for comments. Also, during the Big Topic podcasts, I will be turning off channel redeems. I know it sucks, and I suck for it. But to keep things moving and to respect everyone's time, as well as the VOD watchers, this is what we've got. I will be running ads, and they will serve as breaks, but I will be cutting them out of the video for the VOD post. Please consider watching the ads, as they do help and support the channel and make it so that I can continue to make content like this and keep things fun. Otherwise, subscribing is a great way to support the channel and its growth. Even if you are here for the live stream, consider giving the VOD a brief watch. Even getting past the first 10 minutes of the VOD helps this channel and the YouTube channel grow. Information is important, and the wider of an audience this reaches, the more people it can potentially help. So, full disclosure, we've got about an hour's worth of content to cover, and it's a lot. So, let's get started. Today, we are talking about something deeply personal to me, cults. I'm actually really excited to have this topic be the reason that we're returning to Mystic Quarters in the first place, because I have been in a cult, and with everything going on in the country that I live in, I felt it was important to have a good space to talk about cults and answer any questions you may have. The name of the game is honesty and transparency today, and we're really going to dig deep on what cults were, what they are, and what they can do to people trapped in them. Now, like I said, I do have an interest in cults and always have, and also my interest isn't just from some outsider perspective. I was in one. It was called gratitude training. It was a so-called leadership and personal growth program that really was just an offshoot of LifeSpring style training. On the surface, it was all about self-improvement, empowerment, and community. But underneath that, it was built on manipulation, financial exploitation, and emotional control. And like a lot of these groups, it didn't seem dangerous at first. It felt exciting, transformational, and even life-changing. When most people hear the word cult, they think about Jonestown, Heaven's Gate, or the Manson family. All of these are groups with extreme beliefs that led to disaster, but cults don't always look like that. Some are religious, some are political, and some, like the one I was in, disguise themselves as self-help movements, business coaching programs, or even wellness retreats. And that's what makes them dangerous. You don't always know that you're in a cult until you're already deep in it. But cults weren't always seen as a bad thing. In fact, they were just a normal part of life. In ancient times, they were religious groups dedicated to certain gods or spiritual beliefs whose rites served as initiation into the mysteries of these beliefs, mostly to mark the passage of time. The Egyptians had cults dedicated to Osiris, the Greeks had their mystery rites, and even early Christianity was labeled as a cult by the Roman Empire. So how did we go from that to the modern cults that manipulate, exploit, and sometimes take lives? In this episode, we're going to break it all down. We'll talk about where cults started, how they've evolved, and what separates a simple group or movement from something truly dangerous. We'll also dive into some of the most infamous cults in history and how their tactics are still used today. And it's definitely in all the ways you expect. We'll also be constructing a cult leader's profile, how to tell if you or a loved one is in a cult, how to get yourself out, how to support a loved one that's in a cult, and identify your own situational vulnerabilities to encourage resistance to cults. After that, there will be a Q&A session dedicated to your questions. And then we'll talk briefly about resources for cult victims, all of which will be in the show notes for wherever you get your podcasts and the YouTube video. There will be a quiz at the end. There will be. I know. I'm going to put you all on the spot, but it'll be worth it, I promise. So stick around and pay attention. So if you've ever wondered how smart, capable people get pulled into cults, or you've ever questioned whether a group you're part of might have some cult-like red flags, this episode is definitely where you need to be. Just as a note, this is going to be from a mostly Western perspective. One, because it's the only one I have. But over time, during other learning hours, we can absolutely dive into other cults that aren't in the United States or aren't in European countries. Also, there are going to be some seriously broad strokes that I am painting to get us through the history and to the meat of this conversation. But the context is important, which is why we're going through it. I am so happy to be back, and I can't wait to get into this with you. So let's dive in to the evolution of cults from ancient rituals to modern manipulation. Yeah. Now that we've got everything, now that we've got the setup, before we dive in to the history of modern cults and how they manipulate people, I need to take a step back, because for most of history, cults weren't sinister. They were sacred. In ancient polytheistic societies, Greece, Rome, Persia, Egypt, just name a few, the word cult simply referred to a specific set of practices dedicated to a particular deity. These cults weren't fringe, they were how people structured their lives. You'd participate in the cult of Demeter for the harvest, Mithras for strength, if you were a soldier, or Isis for healing. Each cult offered a ritual connection to a part of life. And you often didn't belong to just one. You moved between them. It was a fluid, multi-threaded spiritual life shaped by need, season, and social role. That pluralistic model, however, began to shift with the rise of Zoroastrianism, which was an ancient Persian religion that introduced something new: binary morality and a single universal God. Zoroastrianism, mostly through conquest, gave us the foundations of what would later become Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. One true God, a cosmic battle between good and evil, linear time and final judgment, and finally, and perhaps the most important, the idea of religious truth instead of religious function. Judaism developed next, shaping identity through covenant and memory. Christianity evolved from Judaism, offering salvation to everyone. Islam came a little bit later, building on both, offering divine law, unity, and total submission to God's will. Oh, that slide is rough. I'll fix that later. Each of these monotheistic systems spread not just through faith, but through mimetic evolution, meaning the ideas that survived were the ones best suited to replicate themselves. These religions didn't just offer meaning, they offered identity, language, law, and belonging, all in one thing. They did discourage mixing, demanded loyalty, and often outcompeted other belief systems simply by being more all-encompassing. In that sense, monotheism didn't just replace cults, it absorbed their function and then rewrote the rules. Fast forward to today, and you see that same mimetic machinery, but without the centuries of structure behind it. Modern cults are like stripped-down religions, built to spread fast, take root deep, and demand total commitment. They use emotional intensity, refined language, social pressure, and closed feedback loops to replicate themselves. They're not concerned with the sacred. They're concerned with the survival of ideas. And the really dangerous ones, They borrow just enough from tradition to feel ancient, even when they're brand new. Understanding this history in a general sense helps us see that cult dynamics didn't just come out of nowhere. They're an evolution, a mutation of deeply human systems, those of ritual, meaning, belonging, and truth. And we've always needed these things. But when a system demands obedience instead of wisdom, isolation instead of integration, and loyalty over love, that's when it stops being sacred and starts being dangerous. There's another important thread, however, that brings us closer to the modern cult landscape, especially the kind of cult I was pulled into: the rise of New Thought, spirituality, and its offshoots. In the early 20th century, a movement called the Unity School of Christianity blended Christian language with ideas about personal power, divine mind, and the creative force of thought. It was part of a larger trend called New Thought, which focused on healing, prosperity, and mental control over reality. But over time, many New Thought groups began to strip away their explicitly Christian roots. What remained was a more universal, less dogmatic language focused on things like energy, vibration, mindset, and manifestation. This shift made them more accessible and marketable, and that's when they exploded in popularity. In the second half of the 20th century, many of these offshoots evolved into what we now call large group awareness trainings, or seminars that promise personal transformation through intensive workshops, emotional catharsis, and rewired belief systems. But, but there's just a small, tiny issue. Um, as they distanced themselves from traditional Christianity, many of these groups rebranded themselves using appropriated indigenous and Eastern spiritual language. They stole from Native American rituals, Buddhist concepts, Hindu mantras, Taoist metaphors, all without context, respect, and the community that goes with these things. What they were selling wasn't spirituality, though. It was a curated experience of emotional power, stitched together from symbols that didn't belong to them. Now, before I talk about the cult that I was in and how I got out, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that cults don't all follow the same blueprint overall. They come in different flavors, different styles, all of that. But the tactics, the patterns, they echo. Devotion, for one, can take a lot of forms, and in many cases it leads to serious injury. In the late 1970s, Jim Jones led a movement that started as a church, evolved into a commune, and ended in mass death. More than 900 people died in Jonestown, Guyana. Men, women, children, all of it. All under Jones's orders. The group was built on racial equality, social justice, and spiritual unity, until it turned into paranoia, control, and murder disguised as sacrifice. This is where we get the phrase "drink the Kool-Aid" from, and for me, that phrase is a gross oversimplification of what it means to buy into a cult, especially when we have documented proof that not everyone drank willingly. Many were terrified, coerced, and trapped into doing so. Now, big dreams and cults have gone hand in hand since forever, and no cult shows that more readily than the Manson family. In the 1960s, Charles Manson used music, apocalyptic ideas, and LSD to gather a following of mostly young women. He convinced them that a race war called Helter Skelter was coming, and manipulated them into committing a string of brutal murders in Los Angeles. Manson never killed anyone directly. He just made other people believe they had to. But perhaps one of the most concerning cults, Heaven's Gate, is next. They believed that Earth was about to be recycled, and that the only escape was to ascend aboard a spaceship hiding behind the Hale-Bopp Comet. In 1997, 39 members died by suicide in a California mansion, dressed identically, leaving behind farewell videos. They saw themselves as evolving beyond the human body to become digital cosmic pilgrims. And in many ways, they were one of the first cults to fully integrate technology into their belief system. More recently, we have Nexium. Nexium was marketed as a personal growth company. It offered leadership trainings and professional development. But beneath that glossy surface was a secret society of coercion, blackmail, and branded women. Its founder, Keith Rainier, is now serving 120 years in prison for crimes that include sex trafficking and racketeering. It's a reminder that not all cults wear robes. Some wear suits. These are the extreme cases, the ones that make headlines, documentaries, and true crime podcasts. But they follow the same principles you'll find in quieter, more palatable cults. Charismatic leaders, identity shifts, loyalty demands, and belief systems that become immune to questioning. The cult that I was in didn't end in death, but it did ask me to hand over my trust, my language, and my sense of self. And in some ways, that's what made it harder to spot. And I want to tell you about that. However, before that, we are going to take a break. Mostly because I forgot that I need water to talk for as long as I am right now. So we're going to run a 3-minute ad break, and then we are... Shush. It'll be fine. 3-minute break so we can all process and do all that fun stuff. Yes, go get water. Go use the restroom because it gets intense from here. Thank you, lady. I appreciate that. Oh my God, what is happening with my model again? I don't understand this. Always. There we go. Okay, at the very least now, I think my eyes are more or less blinking at the same time now. Cool. All right. How are you feeling so far? Give you more. Okay. That's fair. Oh my God. So scuffed. Good. I'm glad. Everything is going to be just fine. Cool. Okay. So let's... Sleepy. All right. So, okay. We've talked... Okay, so we've covered a lot so far. Like we've actually covered a lot so far. We've traced cults in a general sense from their sacred origins to their modern mutations. We've looked at groups that ended in tragedy and others that looked harmless on the outside. But now it's time to tell you my story. I'm going to tell you about the cult that I was part of, how it worked, and why it didn't feel like a cult until much later. Okay. It was called gratitude training. It didn't take place in a compound or a mansion or a secret retreat. It was a repurposed dance studio. There were fluorescent lights, neatly arranged chairs, a podium at the front, flip charts, and surprisingly, a back table with people sitting at it. It certainly looked like a leadership seminar because that's what it was supposed to be. It was pitched to somebody, or it was pitched to me by someone I trusted. They said it had changed their life, that I'd come out more confident, more focused, more in control. And honestly, I was open to it. Like a lot of people who end up in those spaces, I was in a season of transition looking for answers, direction, or at the very least, something that made sense. And that's how it started. Not with control, not with coercion, a connection. And at first, it did feel like a normal seminar, a little corporate, a little self-helpy. But then the trainer really started talking. And I mean, really started talking. At first, what he said made just enough sense to nod along. He was right, after all. I wasn't where I wanted to be in my life just yet, and something about my life wasn't working because I kept getting turned away from success. It was all surface level stuff about limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, unlocking your potential. But then his tone started to change. He got louder, more passionate, like he was channeling truth. And suddenly I felt like I needed to be there. I was hooked. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. And I so very badly wanted to believe he was right. During the seminar, I was assigned a coach from the back table. This person's job was to stay close while I was out of the training room and help me contextualize the training over those 4 days. That's a common tactic, by the way. You're given a guide, a buddy, a coach, someone who makes you feel supported while keeping tabs on your mental alignment with the group. It feels like mentorship, but it's just surveillance cloaked in care. Like, really, that's what it is. Gratitude training was broken into several parts. Part 1 was about reshaping the way we spoke, which sounds harmless until you realize it wasn't just about shaping communication, it was thought control. They started to change our definitions, our vocabulary. The idea was that our current mindset was broken and that if we wanted to be free, we had to rewire the way we talked. The most powerful tactic to make us receptive was sleep deprivation. Long days, emotionally intense exercises, minimal breaks. It's easier to rewire someone's mind when they're exhausted. And then came the moment that told me everything I needed to know. I just didn't know how to hear it yet. A woman stood up during one of the days who was a sexual assault survivor, and she pushed back on something the trainer had said. She asked if he was implying that she should be grateful for what happened to her. Instead of acknowledging her trauma or validating her pain, he framed it as a gift, something that could help her empathize with others. It was victim blaming, plain and simple, and he was encouraging her to internalize it. And I knew it too. But it was cloaked in empowerment, and wasn't that what we were all there for? But that's how the training worked. Even the most traumatic experiences were fair game to be repackaged and reframed. It kept you aligned with the group, and that's all they cared about. At the end, you're told that you can talk about the training and what it is and your experience, but not the experience of the participants. By part 2, though, I was in deep. This phase is all about breaking down your sense of identity. The trainer of this part of the program assigned you an archetype based on how you showed up during the previous sessions and how you were showing up in part 2. Not how you saw yourself, not how your closest friends or loved ones might describe you, but how they saw you in moments of intense duress and through the lens of their system. In particular, they introduced the concept of a nerd, which was a version of you that you thought didn't serve you and embodied behaviors that you thought detrimental to you. My statement about my nerd, for instance, is that I am a self-righteous, vainglorious, not good enough, but better than you nerd. And then you were supposed to say, and I love myself, and then give yourself a hug. Yeah, I mean, it was weird, but it worked. You were told to embrace this part of your identity. It became part of your label. And once that framework was accepted, it was easier to challenge your old sense of self, especially when they gave you a new framework to work with. My new framework was that I am a beautiful, confident, visionary leader. And they gave that to us. Everyone had their own statement, their own version of themselves that they didn't like, but wanted to embrace, and then the idolized version of themselves that they want to become. And then once that framework is accepted, it's easier to challenge that old sense of yourself. But the reality is it was a controlled demolition of who you thought you were through, frankly, public humiliation and self-shame. That's what they called stretches, by the way. Tasks that you were sent out to complete that are outside of most normal people's comfort zone. If any task wasn't completed, the group was in what they called breakdown, and the training would not continue until the lack of completion was addressed and cleared out of the space. Heavy, heavy air quotes there. There were at least 4 stretches, but the final stretch sticks out the most for me. On Saturday night, we were told to put on a skit with a group for the class based on our archetypes. My group was assigned, my smaller group of three women, including myself, was assigned Madonna. We were first dolls that were made at a factory not quite right. Our voice boxes made us say offensive things to people when we were played with. Because of this, we couldn't be sold. So instead, we went to a home for troubled girls. Once they started to play with us and we started saying bad things to them, they got mad and tore us apart. A resounding, and then they died, came from the coaches, trainer, and your classmates. Then we rushed back to the changing room and started to get changed into our Madonna-inspired outfits. We sang like a virgin and did a routine we came up with in literally 4 hours until the music cut on and the rest of the class started to sing it as well and clap along. Then came the cradle. The lights went down and people from the community that were waiting in the back room came and helped lift us up with the class. And we were made weightless. A song to celebrate our rebirth was played. We felt good. Amazing, really. If you don't know the peace that weightlessness can give you, honestly, go to a float tank at least once and you'll see what I mean. From then on, the rest of the skits made sense. My group was the first to go, and our experience provided the safety of knowing that eventually the music would come and the embarrassment of it all would ease, and then the support would come. It was a symbolic process, but a powerful one. Emotional, loud, and vulnerable. You shed the old version of yourself, and the community welcomed the new one. At the end, they served us dinner. Like, actually. Members from the larger gratitude community, most of which I later found out were on their masterful living journey, decorated the whole room with a theme in mind. Made food based on known dietary restrictions, and we ate while we considered our ordeal. These people had cradled us. and we were grateful for the food. But there's that word, grateful. They had come dressed in black, blending into the background of the soft lighting, and we were in admiration of these people and this community for what they had managed for us. It was a love bombing ritual, yes, but when you've just been cracked open like we were emotionally, that kind of affection sticks. Of course, after the rebirth came the upsell. Part 3, called Masterful Living. It was a 4-month extension program designed, as they said, to really help you get the training and to bring it into your life. On the surface, it looked like goal setting, life coaching, and personal growth. But the real goal here was enmeshment. I was assigned a coach who was juggling 3 to 5 other people. I had a buddy from my class that I had to check in regularly with. I wrote something called a letter of agreement that was sort of a contract that details the things you want to accomplish over the next 4 months. It was really a lot of inner networking designed to keep me as embroiled in the program as possible, even when I was outside of the training room. There were 2 weekends focused on enrollment, which meant recruiting new people from my life. Finding people just as vulnerable as I was, just as wayward, to have them spend their money to come into this community and transform their lives. Because surely my life had been transformed, hadn't it? I was making connections, friends, community. And if everyone agreed on a vision for the world, surely that meant the world would be a better place, right? Also, if you got a call from me during this time in my life, I apologize. I truly didn't know what I was doing. I really just didn't. And I do now, and that's good. But at the time, I did not. But you've got to understand, they framed enrollment as this driving force for good in the world. If one person could recruit 2 people, then the program could continue, the message would spread, and then the world would win and be a better place. I personally fell out of the enrollment game the first weekend of my Masterful Living journey when I was shamed in front of the entire group for wanting to help a friend in the area out financially by getting a haircut while playing the first enrollment game. I didn't realize at the time that the phone calls I was making to friends and family would sound strange to anyone outside of the community. That each failure to enroll was pushing me further into the community because after each one, I would go back to my coach, who would then praise me for even trying. Looking back, though, it reminds me of a tactic that I see commonly used in Episcopalian and Mormon churches in my area, where they take their youth to a Target or a grocery store on a Sunday and then have them try to talk to strangers about God and the church. Inevitably, these kids would get vitriol thrown at them, and then after some hours, they'd be rounded up, told that it was okay when they failed, and that those people were just not ready to accept Jesus into their lives yet. And that their kids had just had their best interests at heart, and that they would pray for their immortal souls that they may be saved, because that was the only way to be saved and lived in the eternal kingdom of heaven. In short, it's indoctrination. So you get 2 weekends of that, a weekend of a seminar, and then finally, 3rd weekend. 3rd weekend was a celebration. Members of the community on a committee came back in full force to serve the graduation class. More weightlessness, more speeches, more emotion. It was a performance of joy. Because surely if I smiled enough, cried enough, looked grateful enough, then I could believe the whole thing had been transformational, even if all I really felt was exhausted. I truly didn't realize what I was part of until I started volunteering to be a coach in the training. It still didn't feel like a cult. It felt like community, momentum, and healing. I had managed to repair my relationship with my partner through this training. I also managed to have a better relationship with my roommate as well. Both of them also went through the training, though they stopped at part 2. I pushed for a lot of things in my life and achieved them. I was feeling great. But what broke me was a few things. First, it was that I liked who I was becoming, but that person was only safe around members of the community. I was actually treated like absolute garbage by the other people in my life while I was in the cult, regardless of whether I had talked to them about the cult or not. And when I started realizing that, I started questioning whether if I was safe if I left, or if I was going to constantly be stuck in the same circle of people. And then there were 2 events. The first, and perhaps the most upsetting for me, sorry, this is hard. The first was watching a very autistic man be put through part 2 multiple times at the behest of his father, with no one questioning why that may not be a good idea. And watching that man break down, crying, sobbing, and needing medical attention when he was told about his most negative qualities by literal fucking strangers in the form of other classmates. And the only one that knew what to do about any of that at the time was me. Y'all, I was in my early 20s. The only reason that I knew what to do was because I have autistic cousins, and I should never have been in that position, ever. Sorry, this is just hard. The second was watching a family get torn apart by gratitude training. The parents were heavily involved in the trainings and encouraged their kids to participate in crafts making in regards to the third weekends, which is it was all pretty harmless stuff. Like, it wasn't like there was anything like sexual or anything like that about the crafting, but like, when all of your craftings like stuff is like centered around the cult, it just seems a little weird. The parents were heavily involved in the trainings and encouraged their kids to participate. I already said that. My brain. I appreciate it, y'all. But anyway, the kind of back to the story. They were largely neglectful of their kids, like, really. And they would often rely on the older child to watch the younger children while they were away for whole weekends at a time every 4 months or so. I saw the hypocrisy and the parentification of the eldest happening in real time, and that, on top of several other factors, finally broke me from the control. I started reading more about the large group awareness trainings and what their techniques were. I started listening to dissidents already present in the community, including the person that had recruited me. I was lucky. Gratitude didn't have a commune. They didn't get me to uproot my life and move somewhere. And while I had friends in the community, I decided that when my sense of self became built on someone else's terms, when people's trauma was being minimized in service of a message, and when my worth was conditional on my compliance, that wasn't anyone that I wanted to be friends with. I was slowly able to extricate myself by no longer showing up to events. Ghosty Child, hello, welcome. I saw the raid notification. Sorry. But yeah, I was slowly able to extricate myself by no longer showing up to events. I fulfilled my commitments, something they defined as doing whatever it takes, but did not provide any future further commitments. I stopped volunteering. Over the course of several months, I stopped responding to funding requests for new students and donation requests for ML capstone projects. Over those same months, I slowly purged my phone and Facebook friends list of contacts within the community. I didn't offer any explanation, but I did keep in touch with who I thought was worth keeping in touch with and left the rest. But now that you've heard my story, I want to walk you through the patterns. How cults exploit connection, play on vulnerability, and keep people stuck. Because once you know how it works, you can do what I did and take your power back. However, before that, a small break. That was, again, a lot and very intense. So we're going to take a quick 1-minute break. Oh, shit. Thank you. Thank you, Carrot. Thank you, Never. I'm such an awful streamer sometimes. It's fine. So welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking around. I appreciate your patience so far as we get through everything. Clockwork, hello, I see you. But so now that you've heard my story, let's start talking about the tactics. So like I said, my cult was gratitude training. It's a large group awareness movement, and on the surface, it was leadership empowerment and breakthrough. But underneath, it's thought reform, coercive control, identity erosion. Cults like these don't ask for your soul. They ask for your story and then rewrite it. They convince you that it's to your benefit, but it often drains you. Cults don't start with dogma. They start with trust. They start with connection. You're invited by somebody you know, a friend, family member, a coworker who has been through the program, the retreat, etc., and says it has changed their life. They're excited. They're talking about big things, and they want that for you. And cults use this because if you saw an advert on a wall or online, you might just ignore it. But when someone you trust says, "Come with me, this helped me," you're more likely to listen. So you don't show up expecting a cult. You show up because someone made it feel safe and familiar. The moment you enter, that connection expands. You're welcomed, and someone may even recognize you because the person that encouraged you to come talked about you to that person, and they're so excited to see you. When you're primed by someone you trust, you're already halfway bought in. Once you feel like you belong, cults begin to subtly shift your language, not by teaching a new language outright, but by redefining familiar words in unfamiliar ways. It starts small. The trainer or leader might introduce a word you already know, like commitment, and then tells you that it actually means something deeper. For example, in some groups, commitment isn't just sticking to something. It's defined as the willingness to do whatever it takes. And that might sound powerful at first, until whatever it takes starts to mean things you wouldn't normally agree to. Another common term in large group awareness training is stretch. It sounds harmless, even healthy, something that pushes your limits. But in some groups, a stretch becomes a mandatory activity designed to break down resistance. If you hesitate or refuse, you're seen as someone holding back the group, or worse, someone in need of correction. These redefinitions aren't random. They serve a purpose. They reshape how you think by controlling how you speak. And then there's the other thing. The shift in language actually creates a break between you and the outside world. You start talking in ways that people in your life don't recognize. And then when they don't understand you, it creates distance. That distance does two things. First, it encourages you to bring others in, because if the people in your life took the course or joined the group, then they'd finally get you, right? And second, it makes it easier to believe that they're the ones who don't understand, or worse, that they're trying to hold you back. You start to question your own support system. You start to believe the group is the only place you're truly seen. So it's normal when you're essentially assigned a relationship within the community. This can take on the form of a coach, a supervisor, a point of contact, a new leader. They'll frame it as support, someone to help you stay present in the learning. But what it really is surveillance. That person is not your friend. And whether they realize it or not, they're acting as an extension of the leader to steer you back in line with the group. They're also meant to guide your interpretation, making sure that you process everything through the lens of the group's values. It will feel like mentorship, but it's more like supervision. You walk into a room and within minutes you're being told how powerful you are, how everything in your world is mind over matter, and that if you can just be the person that you want to be, you'll be able to do the things that you want to do and have the things you want to have. You're offered eye contact, smiles, kind words with soft voices. And when you're starved for that kind of validation, or you're going through a vulnerable time, it feels like someplace you want to be. It's not manipulation. It's not a red flag. It's home. But there's a term for that. Love bombing. Love bombing, for those that don't know, is when a group or a person floods you with attention, warmth, praise, physical touch, whatever you're receptive to that will make you feel accepted and wanted. And the worst part is that in at least Gratitude's case, it's not even calculated on behalf of the volunteer coaches. All they know is what they're assigned to do and the experience that they had in the training and their desire to share it with new students coming in. But very quickly, from day one, the environment will get intense and emotional, either through a ritual or repeated interactions with other peers. You're asked to share personal feelings, dig deep, expose fears and pain. And when you do that around strangers, it creates a rush of intimacy, an immediate bond born through trauma, which we all know as trauma bonding. You feel seen, but it's not real trust. It's emotional engineering. Because everyone is doing it, it feels safe. But that kind of intimacy, fast, intense, unearned, it's not actually safe. It just feels like safety that's bonding you to the group. Additionally, when you're inside the community you found yourself in, your connections multiply. You're encouraged to keep in touch with peers. Your person will check in whenever you leave the cult's setting. You're told that your breakthroughs and successes matter to the community. So you start showing up not just for yourself, but for them. It creates this dense network of relationships very quickly. And when you're surrounded by people who are all buying in, it becomes harder and harder to be the one who opts out. Then that's when the message starts to shift. You start being asked to do things you wouldn't normally do. You're being told that you're letting down the group by not meeting your breakthroughs or participating less. It doesn't matter what else you have going on in your life because it's all just drift. What they define as anything that's not mindful, by the way. But that's kind of my point. If you don't take another class, you're going to fall out of practice. If you don't show up to the next event, they're going to miss you. Then you're so dopamine high all the time that you don't notice just how much time you're spending with everybody in the community and then not on your other support networks. You've become someone you don't recognize anymore. And maybe you finally have what you want. But what was the cost? So ask yourself, has someone ever brought you into something that felt exciting because they cared about you? Could be anything. A hobby, a new game, a new group of friends, a new job. And then, have you ever ignored small discomforts because the relationship felt too valuable to question? I need you to know that that's not weakness. That's what makes us human. And it's exactly what cults use to get in the door before you even realize that you're holding it open. In this next segment, we're going to talk about timing, because cults don't just wait for a chance to connect. They wait until you're at your most vulnerable, when your life is shifting and you're looking for solid ground. So, one of the biggest myths about cults is that they target the weak, gullible, or desperate. That is simply not true. And if you fell for a cult and you think that's why, that is not true. Okay? And I need you to know that. Cults target people in transition, people who are smart, capable, and even the high achieving can fall into this at any time. But maybe they're going through a rough patch in life and they're disoriented. That moment of disorientation, that's the doorway. Cults thrive in what psychologists call liminal space, the in-between. The moment after the breakup but before the healing, the season between jobs, the identity crisis after leaving a religion or graduating school or becoming a parent. That part of life where the ground under you feels soft and shifting and you want something solid to stand on. That's when the invitation comes in. A friend reaches out. A coworker says, "Hey, you should check this out." And suddenly the timing feels perfect because you're searching for something, whether that's meaning, purpose, or clarity. And they say, "We have it." But it's not just the timing. Once you're in, the group will often intentionally destabilize you further. They'll question your values, your beliefs, your past decisions. You'll hear things like, "How's that been working for you?" Or, "What if everything you believed was wrong?" These questions, they're not meant to be open to exploration, and they're not meant to make you curious. They're meant to break your trust in yourself so the group can become your new compass. It's disorienting for sure, but it can also feel freeing, especially if your old worldview wasn't working. And that's what makes it so seductive. You're not being forced to join something, you're being rescued. At least that's how it feels. But this is why intelligent, self-aware, successful people can still fall into cults. Because strength doesn't make you immune to vulnerability. And cults aren't looking for broken people. They're looking for people in motion, people in search of the next version of themselves. Honestly, in my experience, the people who are most driven to grow are the most susceptible. They're hungry for transformation. They believe in self-work. And they also think they're too smart to get manipulated. So take a breath and ask yourself, have you ever been in a period of transition where you were open to anything that promised clarity? Have you ever chased growth so hard you ignored your gut to get there? These moments, again, don't make you weak. They make you human. But recognizing them can make you safer. Because when you know you're in a vulnerable moment, you can choose what to open yourself up to and what to walk away from. So, we're looking at this monolith of an organization and we're in deep. Who leads these cult groups? Now, I'm sure, much to everybody's disappointment, cult leaders are not going to be snarling maniacs on a street corner shouting nonsense. That'd make them easy to identify, right? They're usually the most magnetic person in the room. They know how to hold eye contact just long enough to make you feel seen. They know how to drop just enough wisdom to keep you leaning in. Charisma is their weapon and they wield it well. Because again, it's not about what they say, it's how they say it. Remember how I said that one of the trainers dismissed the assault victim? He said it with such conviction that she stayed in the training and even went on to have a part 2. These people speak with confidence, certainty, and emotional intensity. They don't offer ideas, they deliver revelations. And that's one of the defining traits of a cult leader. They speak in absolutes. Not I think or I wonder, but this is the truth. No footnotes, no nuance, just bold declarations. And said with so much conviction that your brain stops asking, wait, is that even true? Sometimes what they say is vague enough that you can project your own meaning onto it. Sometimes it's phrased in a way that sounds deep but collapses when you examine it. But because it's delivered with such passion, you assume you must be the only one who's not getting it. Most cult leaders believe or claim to believe that they're uniquely gifted. They might call themselves a coach, a teacher, a channel, or a visionary. But underneath it all, it is the same message. I know what you need better than you do. I see what you can't see. Follow me, and I'll show you the truth. Cult leaders also tend to have narcissistic traits. Grandiosity, a need for admiration, an apparent lack of empathy, and a list of exploitative relationships a mile long. But these traits are hidden behind spiritual language or therapeutic frameworks. They don't say, obey me. They say, trust the process. And that process always leads back to the group. But one of the most dangerous things, some cult leaders actually believe their own mythology. They're not always the con artists. Some start off with good intentions and then get addicted to the power. Others build a system that rewards delusion, and they double down rather than admit they're wrong. That does not make them harmless. In fact, it makes them harder to question because their conviction is real. The next trait of a cult leader is their ability to waffle or go from loving you to shaming you real quick. One moment, they are calling you powerful and full of potential, and then the next, they're cutting you down in front of everyone when you thought you had a grasped understanding of what they're trying to teach you. That sharp switch from praise to shame keeps people off balance. You start second-guessing your instincts, walking on eggshells, wondering, did I do something wrong? And suddenly, you're not trying to grow anymore. You're trying to stay in their good graces. And finally, the way a cult leader will reinvent themselves, spinning a myth in the process. A lot of cult leaders build their credibility on a reinvention story. They'll say they came up from nothing, that they were lost, broken, spiritually bankrupt, take your pick, until they found the path they now teach. But these stories are often vague, unverifiable, or constantly shifting. Still, they work because they frame the leader as living proof that the system works. And if you want what they have, you better get on board. So, ask yourself, have you ever followed someone not because of their credentials, but because of how they made you feel? Have you ever excused their bad behavior because their message seemed too important to question? Charisma is not the truth. A redemption story is not a qualification. And people who demand devotion but refuse accountability are not leaders. They're rulers. And that is not a good thing. Next, we're going to be taking everything we just covered and flip the lens inward. How do you know if you or someone you love might already be in a cult? What does that actually look like from the inside when the walls start closing in, but you can't quite see it yet. So, how do you know? Because the word cult feels extreme, right? It conjures up images of isolation, chanting, wild-eyed leaders, or tragic endings. But like we've been addressing, the reality is far more subtle and far more common. Most people in cults don't realize they're in one. They think they're part of a movement, a mission, a family, and it feels empowering until it doesn't. So let's take a look at the red flags. Cults don't just give you something to believe in, they give you someone to believe against. They use us versus them language constantly. The enlightened versus the asleep. The committed versus the resistant. The in-group versus the haters. The drift versus mindfulness. This narrative doesn't just bond the group together. It isolates them from the outside world. Friends and family who express concern are labeled negative, toxic, or unsupportive. And slowly, the group becomes your only trusted source of truth. Cults also reward loyalty over critical thinking. If you have doubts, you're told you're in your head or resisting transformation. You're taught that discomfort means the process is working, not that something might be wrong. You stop asking questions not because you found the truth, but because you're afraid of being labeled disloyal. And once doubt becomes a moral failing, logic doesn't stand a chance. There's always also, God, almost ran over that part. Then there's the constant commitment. There's always more to do. More trainings, more events, more check-ins. You're expected to be constantly available, constantly doing the work, constantly enrolling others. Free time becomes a red flag. Rest becomes laziness. Privacy becomes avoidance. You're stretched thin emotionally, mentally, financially, and the group calls it growth. We've kind of already talked about language, but let's go a little deeper. When a group redefines common words or tells you that outsiders just wouldn't understand, they're creating something called linguistic isolation. You end up speaking in ways that only make sense inside the group, and that makes it harder to leave. You might also be told not to talk about certain processes or exercises. If transparency is discouraged, that's a problem. If you're told that anyone who questions the methods just isn't ready for the truth, that's control, not growth. And then the next and final bit is the conditional belonging. You feel like part of a family until you push back. Then suddenly you're cold-shouldered and often infantilized. You're labeled resistant, you're ignored. You're not asked to do the more community-focused events. Affection becomes performance-based, and you're praised when you conform, and you're sidelined when you don't. In healthy communities, disagreement doesn't mean exile. In cults, obedience is the cost of love. So if you're listening to this and wondering, am I in something like this? I want to say this clearly. It's okay to question. It's okay to doubt. You're not weak, you're not broken, and you're not alone. Cult dynamics are about systems, not stupidity. They work because they are designed to feel good first and harmful later. And the hardest part is the good parts were probably real. The connections, the breakthroughs, the sense of purpose, that's what keeps people from walking away. But you can hold the good and still name the harm. So, now we're going to talk gently as possible about the process of leaving. Because once you start seeing the red flags, the next question is, how do I get out? So let's say you started noticing the red flags. You're questioning the language, the control, the way you're constantly stretched thin. You're wondering how you got here. And now you're wondering how to get out. Leaving a cult or even a cultic group isn't like flipping a switch. It's not clean, it's not easy, and it almost never happens all at once. Because when you leave, you're not just walking away from a program. You're walking away from a system of meaning, from a social structure, and a version of yourself. One of the hardest parts of leaving is dealing with cognitive dissonance. That's the psychological discomfort we feel when we're holding two conflicting beliefs at the same time, such as, this group helped me, but it also harmed me. Or, I thought I was growing, but now I see I was being manipulated. That dissonance creates an internal war. You question your memory, your intelligence. You might even ask yourself, was any of it real? And you feel shame for not seeing it sooner. Again, I say, none of that is your fault. You were responding to real needs, real pain, and real moments of uncertainty. You trusted. And that doesn't make you naive, it makes you human. Leaving a cult is a kind of grief. You're grieving the community, that version of yourself you thought you were becoming, and all the goals you tied to the program. And sometimes you're grieving the loss of a sense of certainty you didn't even realize you've been clinging to. And that grief is valid. And like all grief, it does not move in a straight line. Give yourself time and grace to heal. Grief is the proof that it mattered. Once you start stepping away, you might hear from people still inside the group. They might say that you're giving up, that you're betraying your growth, that you're not committed anymore. You might feel guilt. You might feel retaliation, emotional or otherwise. Some groups will try and pull you back in by love bombing you all over again. Others try to shame you into returning. Both are tactics. Both are signs that you made the right choice. Their reaction validates your choice to leave. So here's what helped me and what I've seen help others. First, find one person outside the group who will listen without judgment. Second, write things down. Keep track of what you experienced, what you're feeling, and what you're starting to question. Third, don't rush to replace the system. There's a void after you leave, and it's tempting to fill it fast. But try and tolerate the discomfort instead. Fourth, seek out other stories. Hearing from other survivors can help you make sense of your own experience. You are not alone in this. And fifth, please seek therapy if you can afford it. There are therapists that specialize in deprogramming cult victims. There is help out there for you. Remember, exiting is not abandonment. If you're in the process of leaving or thinking about it, there's something I want you to remember. You don't need permission to walk away. You don't need to justify your exit to anyone who has not lived your experience. And the fact that you're asking questions, that's your power coming back online. In the next section, we're going to focus on people outside of the cult. Because maybe you're not the one on the inside. Maybe someone you love is. So how do you reach them without pushing them further away? Let's talk about what to do next. So, you're not the one on the inside, but you have someone that is. And it's someone you love. And you're watching them change slowly but completely, and it feels like watching them slip away. They talk differently. They act differently. They start cutting people off that have been in their lives for a long time. And when you try and reach them, it feels like you're talking to someone who's almost them, but not quite. So how do you help without pushing them further in? How do you support them without becoming the enemy? Well, you might want to shake them awake. Tell them it's a cult, send them articles, call it is what it is. But in most cases, that won't work. Because when someone's been conditioned to see outside criticism as a threat, confrontation just confirms the group's narrative. It says, see, they're trying to pull you away from the truth. Instead, focus on connection, curiosity, and love. Ask open-ended questions. Reflect on shared memories. Keep the bridge intact, even if it feels one-sided for a while. You are not going to argue them out, but you may love them out. You can try asking them questions to re-engage the curious mind that got them into this situation in the first place. Try things like, what do you love about the group? Has anything ever made you feel uncomfortable? Do you feel like you can disagree openly? How do they handle people who leave? You're not looking to corner them. You're planting seeds of doubt and reflection. And sometimes that's all you need to do. Just leave the question. One of the hardest parts about leaving a cult is letting go of the good parts. If you dismiss all of it as fake, you risk alienating your loved one even more. Try acknowledging what they found there. Say things like, it makes sense you feel drawn to that. It sounds like it really helped you feel confident. Then gently follow up with, what changed? Or, do you feel like it still supports who you're becoming? That balance is delicate, but it keeps you in the conversation. And then, keeping the exit door open. Make sure that they know that if they ever have doubts, if they ever want to talk, and if they ever need space, you're there. No judgments, no lectures, all presents. Let me repeat that. No judgments, no lectures, all presents. You might be the only person in their life who isn't trying to control them at this point. And that contrast over time will speak louder than anything you can say. But then there's also you. Supporting someone in a cult can be exhausting, confusing, and painful. They may relapse time and time again back into that cult, and you might start to feel helpless or angry or heartbroken, and all of that is valid. You can't be their lifeline if you are drowning too. Find support. Talk to people who understand these dynamics, and remember, even small acts of connection matter. Even if they don't leave right away, they're listening. They will remember who treated them like a person, not a problem. If you're trying to help someone you love, I want you to know this. You are doing something incredibly brave. You are staying connected even when it hurts. And that might be the one thing they need the most when they're finally ready to walk away. That said, know your limits. Do not engage more than you can. You are vulnerable when you're emotionally invested, which leads us to our next section. We're shifting the lens one more time, back to prevention. How can we recognize our vulnerable moments before someone else does? What does it mean to cult-proof your life in a world full of manipulative systems? We've talked about the story, the system, the people, and the escape, but what about prevention? What can you do to make yourself less susceptible to cultic influence before it even begins? The answer is not to become paranoid. It's to become self-aware, because cults don't hook you through logic, they hook you through timing. And that timing, it's based on what we call situational vulnerabilities. These are moments in your life that make you more open to influence. And they don't mean you're weak. Again, they mean you're human and living your life. They include things like grief, divorce or breakups, job loss or career transition, moving to a new city, graduating or aging out of a system, leaving a religious tradition, new parenthood, illness, or health scares. These are the chapters in your life when your identity is in flux, when you're asking big questions about who you are, where you belong, or what comes next. And here's something that might not occur to you. Foreign intelligence agencies use the exact same framework to recruit spies, informants, or assets. They don't just look for someone with access, they look for someone in transition. They identify people going through divorce, financial trouble, loneliness, or a midlife crisis. Why? Because those people are more open to a compelling offer. It's not about IQ, it's about timing, and cults do the same thing. So what do we do with that? We practice checking in with ourselves when life is shifting. Ask yourself, am I feeling untethered right now? Do I feel desperate for clarity or belonging? Am I about to join something because it promises to fix everything fast? Am I ignoring red flags because I'm craving connection? These aren't questions to shame yourself with. Do not do it. They're just early warning lights. Signals that you might be in a moment where your defenses are low and someone else's influences could sneak in. Do not, under any circumstances, wall yourself off from every new experience. Instead, approach new systems, teachers, and communities with curiosity and caution. Ask, can I disagree with this person and still be welcome? Do they benefit more from my compliance than my autonomy? Is this about growth or about loyalty? And most importantly, do I feel like I can leave and still be whole? No one is completely immune to cultic influence, but the more you understand your own emotional weather, your needs, your seasons of change, your patterns, the harder it becomes for someone else to hijack your narrative. You don't have to be on guard all the time, just looking. Power doesn't come from knowing all the answers. It comes from knowing yourself. That is the end of the episode proper. And if you stayed with me through all this, thank you. Whether you've been in a cult, you have a loved one, you've loved someone who has, or just wanted to understand the world a little more clearly, I hope this helped. Let's take a quick break because that was a lot, and then we'll reconvene for the Q&A that you and all have so graciously provided for questions. I need some time to look over and prepare. Give me a few minutes. All right. I'm back. Let me fix my camera. Holy shit. Schrodinger's cat. Jesus fucking Christ. Oh my gosh. What? Why is my camera being this way? Hold on. Help. Okay, let's try turning it off and turning it back on again. Shall we? Okay, there we go. That worked. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I am so pleased. So let's go ahead and take a look at the questions that y'all gave me. Is there a demographic that is more likely to fall for cults than others? No, not statistically. And not in the research that I've done. Though, in my experience, so okay, the statistics and in my experience are two totally different things. So, per research, the answer is no. Per my experience, um, middle-aged men and women, but especially middle-aged men who are in corporate structures, and then anywhere from 18 to 23-year-olds, but especially women, looking for a way out of some harmful belief systems. That's been my experience mostly. That's their like general demographic, is like white men ages like God anywhere from 35 to 55. And then young girls anywhere, or young women aged 18 to 23. Especially for large group awareness training. The next question, thank you, Carrot, for that cleric, by the way. The next question is, what does gratitude training gain long-term from an individual if they did not take money or other forms of goods? They did take money. So gratitude took $400 per training. Or $400 for a part 1. I think it was $600 for a part 2, and then I think it was a $1,400 for a part for ML. Any group that comprises of any group that comprises of disillusioned people would be at risk. Yes. Yes, Lils, that is in fact correct. That is definitely the, like anybody. I would also say that neurodivergent people are probably at a incredibly high risk of falling into cults, mostly because they provide redefinition of the social contract in an incredibly structured way. So that's also something that I experienced. But back to the thing about gratitude training. So they do, like, the woman lived in Florida in a home that was paid off. These cults do actually make a lot of money, and they pay their people like garbage. But the trainers do also get paid very well, or at the very least have incentive to provide the illusion that they get paid very well. So, like, really the only person that, like, it's a whole pyramid scheme. It's a whole emotional pyramid scheme. Like, the only person that really benefits is the person at the top. The trainers are more or less required to style themselves as success objects to prove that the training works. I imagine that includes going into a lot of debt if they can't afford something like a nice suit or something. But also, like, yeah, and that's the other thing too, is that like all the coaches and stuff, they're all volunteers. Like, they don't get paid. Also, Steph, is that you? I love you. Hi. But yeah, no, the literal, like, literally they're not like the coaches aren't making any, like, the volunteer coaches aren't making any money off of this. Really the only people that are the trainers and the head, which is annoying as fuck. And also goes into that whole thing where there's always constantly something to do. Like, you're constantly being asked to volunteer, you're constantly being asked to coach, you're constantly being asked to, like, captain or like do something. And they don't get paid for any of that. Kavan asks, So it would be fair to say that a cult doesn't target the weak, but they target people who are weakened, whose defenses are down. Yes, absolutely. If with the cult, it really, and also it really depends on the cult. But they they do like, okay, so here's the thing about social networking. Your struggles that you're going through in your life, most of the peers around you probably are as well. And so you probably have a shared experience of looking for meaning at roughly the same time. And so they rely on that to have you recruit from your circle. That's how they make it make sense. Well, it did all this good stuff for you, surely it can do all this good stuff for your friends. Thank you for your question. Next question from Kevon is, so would both love bombing and shaming at the same time be a tactic to bring you back into the cult already if you're leaving? Yes. Okay. My final volunteer event was a third weekend. And I did not have a car anymore. My car broke down. My license was suspended. And there was nobody coming from my area that could pick me up to be able to get me to the third weekend so that I can be in service. And rather than acknowledge that that was a thing and allow me to recuse myself from being in service and volunteering, I was shamed on a call of 10 other people for not doing whatever it took to honor my commitment. Which, all it did was make serving that third weekend feel like a chore. And Steph, if you're in here, it was the one that you and I volunteered on together. If I remember correctly, you were actually the one that ended up coming to get me at great personal cost to yourself at the time, so that I could be there. It was pretty bad. They suggested that I borrow somebody else's car to drive down. It was bizarre, like so bizarre. Okay. Bot asks, how do I deal with or confront a person who's close to me and I know is deep into what seems to me like a cult, so much that I feel like no matter what I do or say, it will make them feel like will make them see that they're in a cult. You are going to have to do what I did with my friend Steph, which, yes, if your friend is beyond hearing what you're trying to say, stop trying to convince them. Ask them questions, be in discovery with them, be constantly ask them questions. If they be a safe place for them to come talk to you about their experiences. No judgment, no lectures, all presence. No judgment, no lectures, all presence. Just be there. With my friend Steph, whom I love so much, and I really hope that she's going to be okay talking about her like this. I really did need to just be around. That was it. She came to her own conclusions in her own time. She was the one that started questioning and seeing the incongruencies all on her own. And it will take time. Like, it will absolutely take time. And she... I love you so much. What if Carrot, I'm reading the questions at this point, so you can take the rest of the night off and just chill and like be in or not, because people are going to, okay, cool. Nope, I still need you, Carrot. I love you. What if the person in the cult cuts you off so you can't talk to them or ask them these questions? The unfortunately, you're just going to have to keep the door open on your own. Like I said, keep the bridge built, even if it seems one-sided. There are a lot of people that I still don't talk to after years and years of being out of the cult because, frankly, I'm embarrassed. Like, I'm so embarrassed. And I'm like, yo, I know that I've been like really calm about this and like really like, yeah, I've like had some emotional moments, but like, I'm embarrassed by how I was in the cult and like how like much I bought into it and also tried to like spread the ideology. The most bizarre thing ever. But the only thing that you can do is hope that they come back. Yes, Steph, you did do everything you could to get me to that third weekend, and I love you. What advice would you give someone who was born into a cult and has to deconstruct by themselves in college? Oh my God, get therapy. Moss, get there. Like, seriously, get therapy. That is going to be the only, like, really. So in my experience, the moment that someone who was born into a cult gets into an environment such as college, they really start like realizing what they're in, especially if that college is not affiliated with the cult in any way. And yeah, the embarrassment is the point. You're supposed to feel like society would never accept you back. Exactly. Which is why like holding space for them to return is so important. But if you were born into a cult, and you have to deconstruct, go talk to like and you're in college. Let's say you're still in college and not out yet. Go tell your student, like your on-campus counselor. Most colleges have them these days. They have some sort of mental health professional. Go tell somebody. You're free. Go tell them. Go tell on him. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm telling. I'm a tattletale. I'm telling on him. Go tell on the cult and the people that kept you in it. Go tell. Like, just go tell. Go tell everybody you can. And like obviously be safe, but like, you know, there are so many ways now that like people can like not need their parents' information to fill out a FAFSA, for instance. You don't need to contact them anymore. But also like if you do need to go back, be safe. Please be safe. Kavan, the cultists suggested you go to your friends and borrow a car. Yes, they did. They did. And the worst thing, Steph, I don't know if you remember this part. The worst thing is that I did end up borrowing a car, but it was for my personal use. And I didn't know that the fuel injector was bad, and I ended up wrecking the person's car that I borrowed. It wasn't a bad wreck, but like, yeah, I still ended up needing Steph to come get me. And like that was just like that was 100% the universe telling me like, no, don't fucking do this. But it is ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. So yeah, oh my god, we did get in trouble for being late. We did get in trouble for being late. Like, bizarre. It was so bizarre. When like the only reason that we were late is because you were coming to get me. Like, you literally drove from Charlotte, which is where the cult was located, up to me and then back down. And I don't, okay, so y'all, I know I just doxed myself a little bit there, but I don't care because I do not fear retaliation from anybody. Fucking try me. Please. I am so down to fight. Like, it's not even funny. I am so tired of being quiet, and there is nothing for me to be afraid of here. Not only because they don't have that kind of power, like they're not Amway and they're not LifeSpring and they're not like anything. Yeah. Fern is my scary dog privilege. Yes. I appreciate that. But really, like, it's also like, it's not, Carrot and Fern, you two are definitely going to be friends, I have a feeling. But this isn't something that I'm afraid of. And even if there is retaliation, whether it's social or otherwise, I just don't care. I really just don't care. My VTuber avatar is not for my anonymity or safety. It's specifically to keep others safe from becoming my friend. Because if you stalk me, we're going to be best friends. I joke about that a lot. But like, it's just true. I will make myself into a person to you. With all of my baggage and all of my everything, if you stalk me, we're going to be friends, and then I'm your problem. No, like, I mean, look, if you need a best friend, I'm probably not the best choice. I'm a little, like, spread thin at the moment, but, like, you know, I Nevison, hello, dear. Welcome. I'm so glad that you were able to make it at this end of the stream a little bit, at least for the Q&A. It's good to see you. Y'all give Draken Soul, aka Nevison, some love. Oh Lord. Yes, I understand. Yeah, the stalking is optional. Normal friendship is possible. Please do not stalk me just to become my friend. You can just ask. We can be friends. But but the point is that, like, stalkers normally don't think of their stalkee as a person. They think of them as an object, and I will just become a person and become super boring. I am glad that everyone has been having fun. But so, quiz time, though, which I told you at the beginning was coming. I have purposely used every technique available to a cult leader this episode. Not to manipulate you, but to make a point. Did you catch me doing it? When? How did it make you feel when I did it? And what's the difference between what I do for you as a streamer, creating a space for you, and a cult leader creating a trap? What safeguards can you, as a viewer, put into place so you don't fall into orbit around someone who does not deserve your trust? When we get into other topics on this channel, we are going to be curious together. You, as the viewer, will always be allowed to challenge me. What happens if I break that social contract? I need you to be thinking about this. Discuss in the chat respectfully or comment on the VOD. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. This has been Arania Stars with Mystic Quarters. I love you all. Stay curious, stay safe, and above all, stay magical. Wait. Resources. Oh my god. I'm such a bad streamer. Okay. Oh my god, I'm such a bad streamer. Okay. So thank you, Karen. Oh my god, you're a lifesaver. All right, so let me turn my webcam off. So resources for healing and support. There's the International Cultic Studies Association, or the ICAHome.com. You have the Reclamation Collective. You have the Freedom of Mind Resource Center. You have the r/excult Reddit, which is peer support and survivor stories. Please, if you've been in a cult, or as always, thank you. It only took 6 hours to get me to. Yeah, no, that's fair. Like, Steph, I love you so much. I'm gonna need some time to decompress after this, but you and I definitely need to have a phone call because I miss your voice. But yeah, the key message here, though, and like everything, is that you are not alone, and you don't need to be fully out to start healing. Don't try and trick yourself into staying. If anything, trick yourself into leaving. There's always something new on the horizon, and you don't need a system that is predicated on your silence and your restraint to be happy. Okay. Now for real, we're ending stream. I love you all. Good night.